Hey, it's Friday night and welcome to the Fancaste, where we talk all things pop culture and maybe even WCBS if we want to. I'm your host, Brainmuffin, and with me on the line is Stephanie Janiczek.
Yep. Hey, yo.
And hopefully I got that at least close to right.
You did?
And also, all the way from the Northeast, and I'm drinking a Northeast IPA, by the way, LMP, is Look at Metal Pro.
Well, thank you for that introduction. I would also like to ask you guys a quick question. Did you hear about Donald Trump's new movie coming out in the summer of next year?
What? No.
Yeah,
No.
apparently it's going to be called Mex Busters. That was a terrible rim shot or whatever I just did.
Ba-doom-tsh. I don't get it.
It was a terrible one.
Yeah.
Well, apparently he's going to dress up as a Ghostbuster and going to go bust out Mexico. So,
I could see
it's not a real
that.
movie. If anybody's thinking about making it into a movie, by all means, go ahead. I would like to see what somebody does with that.
Yeah.
That would actually be funny.
Well, speaking of movies, Avengers is still in theaters, but Gone with the Wind is still number one, adjusted for inflation, $7 billion. So wake me up when someone beats that.
Yep.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
That's worldwide gross, adjusted for inflation.
Yeah, well, of course. That's like saying, blah, blah, blah is the biggest movie star in all of Hollywood. Adjusted for inflation, Harrison Ford is the biggest star in the movie.
I know some people will complain about, actuals. I mean, it's not real money, but it does show. I mean, it's 17.16, I think, is what I found today. I know that it's hard to convert. If you go to Box Office Mojo, you won't see a number that big. I'm not sure what they're calculating, but they've also everything else is adjusted down. Even if you today, I looked at it and even I put it in today's dollars for The Last Jedi or no, The Force Awakens, and then I went to its line and they didn't match. So I don't know what number they're using, but still, Gone with the Wind is up there. I had someone ask me today, because I did post that to the WCBS Facebook page today, and someone asked, well, what was its competition? It's a fair enough question. Really not a whole lot in the theaters, just this little thing called the Great Depression.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a time when people weren't exactly having money to go to movies and stuff like that.
No, they didn't. And I mean, my dad talked about sneaking into the Hollywood Theater in my hometown in 1929. It was like a nickel to get into one movie and 3 cartoons and maybe some new shorts and whatever. And they did that every Saturday because that's what they did. And I really think they did it right. They catered to the audience and, the real people. And now it's like, well, we have to cater to the millennials and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I saw parts of Family Guy's Attack on Millennials. Holy shit. It was literally like, I think, Lucasfilm's thing where they're going, well, we have to talk to the younger people. And I mean, I'm looking at my husband going, oh my God, it literally was awesome.
Well, that's great. That's all. Yeah, I've never really seen that show, and I probably should have.
Yeah, well, the one where they're talking about the millennials, it just came out. I think it was the latest episode. And my mouth dropped open and crashed into the floor. I was like, holy shit. And I don't like Seth MacFarlane at all. I think he's a bad guy. I'm going to talk to my dog. Get away from there. Come here. Come on. Come on. Mommy's using body language right now. Just lay down and go to sleep. Anyway, no, honestly, it was, it's literally like, I don't care if you're a left-wing asshole, a right-wing, whatever, or just someone like going, just follow the Constitution like me. If you saw that episode, everyone of all of us is going, yes, this is exactly it. And it was beautiful. And this is what I think they did to Star Wars. Somebody walked into Lucasfilm and said, "You will cater to this, 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 and this," and they're all going, "Okay, okay, the young crowd, okay," and then nothing, you know, and it crashes and burns, and then Pablo Hidalgo and, you know, Ryan Johnson are going, "Why do they hate this? They love it." No, we don't love it. All right.
Because we hate women. That's why we hate The Last Jedi, right? Isn't that the narrative?
Yeah. Well,
that's really common in Mexico, so just saying.
Yeah. Well, I'm here going, I don't know. I was pretty thinking that Leia was a pretty badass chick, and Mon Mothma, and you know, whatever. And you know, I don't, you know, really see you hating women. You know, maybe wussy pissy ass women, and they weren't wussy pissy ass women. You know, so what's you know, what are you talking about with the women? But I want to go there anyway. So who actually saw the spoilers for Solo?
So, you know, I saw a little bit, well, I think I saw all of Comic Artist Pro's video on it. I know I saw several tweets from you during the day.
Yeah.
Some with rather colorful language, I might add. But
yeah. Yeah, well, you know.
So there's LMP. I don't know. Have you heard about the possible spoilers, or are you familiar with what's going on there?
Well, I've heard some stuff. Like, people are alluding it to, and they were seeing, and I was reading some stuff when I was on Twitter for a little bit. I know I heard something. I saw read some things on the Facebook page, but other than that, I really haven't been paying too much attention to it.
Yeah.
And I already figured. It was kind of like when last night they had the guys had the live stream, and they were talking about the new Predator movie and how we have these, for lack of a better term, soy boys taking over as the military. And I'm thinking to myself, God, in even when they did the movie Predators, you know, the last. Listen, I like all three Predator movies: Predator 1, 2, and 3. I don't think just because 2 gets hated on, it's the worst. Predators was pretty entertaining and enjoyable. I even bought the comic for it, which was a quote unquote the official ending, but better left unsaid. Even in Predators, Adrian Brody had more like badass look to him. Like, this guy actually tried to at least look the part. Now, whether you thought he was convinced or not, that's up to opinion. But you know, at least he put some damn effort into it. Hell, even what was it? I think Topher Grace was in that movie, I believe. And he was like the serial killer or something. So it's a little thing called acting. You know, it convinced me that you are what you're supposed to be. So once I saw the people that they had for Solo, was it Emilia Clarke? This guy that's playing Han. This guy who probably might have been the kid that did this video called "Girls Are Not to Be Trusted," which is very hilarious if you ever want to look it up. But otherwise, I never found him ever funny, Donald Glover. And I looked at them and I'm like, God, none of these men reek any level of awesomeness. None of these women reek any level of awesomeness. They all look like the most, at least, like cardboard pretty boy or something generated in a lab, Hollywood type individuals that they try to convince you they're tough guys. But the reality is, if you were to even so much as raise your voice at them, they'd flinch.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, there's a lot of formulaic pieces in here. Obviously, the cast is done to click a lot of boxes. So, Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and start getting, and let's start discussing some of these possible spoiler, whether the rumor's true, not true, and speculate a bit.
Okay. Well, all right. Go there. Well, here do I begin? Let's see. The big reveal is Han's girlfriend / gang mall girlfriend of the bad guy, one of the bad guys, is actually an Imperial agent who summons up on a hologram Darth Maul. And okay, fine, okay, we get it. It's 10 years before, Yavin 4, New Hope, and before Obi-Wan got his hands on him. So that makes sense. And everyone's going freaking out and going, no, that can't be it. Yeah, it can be. Go look in what Disney's fucked up.
Well, let's chat that a minute. So, Darth Maul. Now, in the cinematic universe, we all saw him get cut in half and fallen down into the shaft in Episode 1.
Yep.
So, which I thought was a huge mistake, and I've talked multiple times even on this podcast that he should have been the main villain throughout. I mean, it was definitely one of the most. It's hard to compete with Vader, but I think he did a very good job as a main villain, and should have been what, in my opinion, the villain Anakin, I think in the second one should have killed off. Because I don't know if you've heard me rant about this on this, Stephanie. I know LMP has. In my opinion, you start with Episode 1. If you're going to follow Luke's path, Anakin's the same age as Luke or close to it. He's not a little kid, so we don't have that problem. And in the second episode is when he basically gives over to the dark side. He has to summon the dark side to defeat Maul. And then Episode 3, he's actually, I think he should have been in the suit most of that movie. And it should have basically been a bloodbath when he was just going after all of the Jedi and everything else. But as opposed to the silliness that we got with Dooku and all this other stuff. So the cartoon, now remind me which cartoon it is that they brought him back with spider legs and all that other stuff.
I think it was probably Rebels somewhere.
Is that Rebels or, because I know there was a couple different cartoons. I didn't watch any of them. I'm familiar with the storylines. So we have a dip into somewhat expanded universe, right? The cartoons aren't part of the cinema. And so we have a possible spoiler, I mean, nothing surprises me at this point. It wouldn't surprise me if all this is just garbage that Disney's putting out to entice. I mean, it's 2 weeks. The premiere was yesterday, and there is no excitement. I mean, my kids are 21 and 18. They've liked the originals. They sort of liked parts of the prequels. They and their friends could care less. I don't even know if they're aware that this movie comes out in 2 weeks. They, my son and all of his friends went and saw Infinity War. They are old enough, obviously, to get into Deadpool, and they can't wait for that one. That's in 4 weeks, I think. And no one seems to give a crap.
Next week.
Right. So it wouldn't surprise me if these are just rumors to get stuff going. So what do you think of what's your take on possible Darth Maul?
I think it is because the guy took the video off, that spoiler video off line.
Right.
And I saw the whole thing, and I'm like going, are you kidding me? He spent half the time talking about, bullshit. He didn't get into it. And I hate that. It's like, just do it. Just tell us what is going on. And when he did, I'm like going, are you fucking kidding me? Pardon me. God. Are you kidding me? It's a boring movie with action sequences that are cool. Han does do that first Kessel Run. Right. And at the time he does it, it's not his ship. He has to go back and win it from Lando.
Right. Well, there's a clip I saw last night on YouTube. It's like clip 9 or something. And it is them getting ready to fly to Kessel. And he's sitting in the co-pilot seat, and the droid makes him move. And the droid does not, it's a female voice. It does not act like any droid we've seen in Star Wars, in movement-wise or in its temperament and stuff. And they're explaining to him that to get to Kessel, they have to pass through, there is a nebula or something like that they have to go through.
Yep. Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, this has been speculating for quite a while. Are we going to get the Kessel Run? Granted, it might be that they go the long way, if you will, and maybe there's a cliffhanger where he's going to try to go the shorter route. This has been something Jeff has also speculated on the main channel that, hey, we've got, it's like we're going to do the Kessel Run and it's going to be, because, yeah, if you go by the letter of the law of what he says to Kenobi in A New Hope, he doesn't say my ship did the Kessel Run. You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon? It's the ship that did the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs. So,
well, here's the deal. He flies it in this, in from what the spoilers said, and right. I'm like, okay, and you can see that that's he was doing what he did, and it's not that Kessel Run, and I'm like going, okay, you're looking for a second movie here, right? And here's the deal.
Possibly, yeah, they could possibly do that.
Yeah, they borrowed everything from the EU, from A.C. Crispin's novels, because here's the thing about that issue. It is 3 or 7, I think, black holes in a row, and there's a nebula. So when you see that, the light flashing, and you see that Star Destroyer, that's a nebula. That's why it looks all smirky, and and the guy that posted that spoiler video, it's like, you're an idiot. You need to shut up. You know what that is? It's a nebula. That's a star that exploded, and it's making more stars. That's what that is. And so when you read the novels that A.C. Crispin wrote, what they did was they compressed everything that she put together. I mean a woman, like me, wrote these novels about Han Solo. So I'm going to say this: yes, women could do Star Wars before, Kathleen Kennedy said, no, you can't do this. This is the first time we've ever been involved in, which is bullshit. Fuck her. Anyway, it's a very difficult thing for him to do, and he did it over and over and over again for Jabba and other Hutts that he was working for. So this whole, oh my God, I'm doing this one time, bullshit. This is your reputation doesn't grow from one moment. Flash in the pan, especially with gunfighters in Western, which is what this is supposed to be. It grows from doing this over and over and over again. And when he said it's the ship that made the Kessel Run less than 12 parsecs, he was flying it, and it was probably like the millionth time he did it. From Kessel to Nal Hutta or Tatooine or wherever Jabba said, I want this spice to go here, and that is, so I'm looking at these spoilers going, oh my God, you've just compressed everything from the EU and A.C. Crispin, God rest her souls, novels in 5 minutes, and there's no explanation. He should have the Force after this. He should be Force sensitive, grab a lightsaber, and be able to kick some ass. As far as I'm concerned with this.
Yeah. I mean, I always wondered how he knew how to, because if you watch even the original movies, he not only understands Chewie, he doesn't understand R2, but the droid that's helping him repair the Millennium Falcon when they're on Hoth speaks to him in some kind of droid language, and he understands that. He says, what do you mean something? Hey, check the other side. This is when they're looking for Luke, right? And when they one of the officers come over.
It's when Luke goes, I'm watching Empire to do a podcast on Sunday, and
right.
and Luke goes to say goodbye to Chewie, and Chewie hugs him.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then he goes, you know, you take care of yourself, and Han goes, you're all right. And Luke goes, you know, he doesn't say anything. I mean, that's guys. I mean, that's what guys do.
Right.
And and Han says, you take care of yourself, and Luke says, you too.
Yeah, it's what you're good at or best at or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a guy's thing.
Yeah, but he talks to that droid.
Yeah.
And then I thought there was some other creature but he seems to understand some but not all.
Yeah.
And always wondered if there was some kind of, I mean, you could just say, the Force, or you could just be, good at picking up bits and pieces of languages but can't speak them.
It's not like he's stupid,
No.
It's not like okay, this is just and Harrison Ford said something about him being dumb, and it's like, no, you're not. No, that no. And this is me looking at everything that I know about how when they were talking about that character, George Lucas basically said, play a version of yourself. And when Harrison Ford says that, I look at him and saying, are you talking about yourself? Because Han isn't stupid. And when you look at the stuff that he did before that he doesn't know that he did, that if he had known that, he would understand the character better. And I don't think he's ever been that interested because he's playing himself. And I would really love someone to explain this to him to make him understand why we love that character so much. Because we could all see there was more to that man than he saw. You understand? I just go, you got it. Oh God, come on, man. You can't say that. And then I think he doesn't get it. It was just some job, but it made him the biggest movie star of all time.
Well, I think, to me, it does seem that he kind of likes the Indiana Jones character a little bit better than Solo. And, he wanted to, I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but apparently, it's been discussed before that on Empire he wanted Solo to die, and Lucas said, "No, your arc's not done," and things like that, and even some of the things that Mark Hamill has said about even the first few meetings, and they were excited. Mark's excited about all the lasers and all this, and he says, "Yeah, settle down, kid." I think he just saw it as a silly space adventure, and it grew into far more than maybe it was intended, and whereas the Indiana Jones was kind of a swashbuckling, and he was the star of those movies, right? He didn't have to share the limelight really.
Yeah.
Whereas in Star Wars, he wasn't the star. He was a star, but he had the limelight. Yeah, and as you were talking, I had to go dig up my, I have a handful. I have 7 books in the EU, I guess you could say. From back in the day, and the 3 Han Solo books I have are by Brian Daley. They're actually before Star Wars, and then I have the 3 Lando Calrissian books that they came up with, where he has the Millennium Falcon, so they're prequels, I guess you could say. And then there's the Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was it's not really canon, but and because I was looking up the A.C. Crispin. Okay, they call it the Han Solo Omnibus. So you've got the Paradise Snare, the Hutt Gambit, and Rebel Dawn. I think these were the originals. I don't know what they've got now, since this was part of the Disney, flushing down the toilet EU, which is him doing the things that you're talking about, the stuff kind of before Star Wars. This is. The trilogy begins 10 years before the events of the first film. It's exactly when this movie's taking place. So, and I don't see, to me, this is how Disney, one of the ways that they do fan service is exactly how you describe, where in a 2 or 3 or 5 minute conversation, they can sum up everything that happened in books that they say that are no longer canon. And since they're not making movies out of it, they don't have to give anybody money, and the like. So yeah, it's, to me, it's just kind of stereotypical. This is exactly what I expect from Disney Star Wars.
It is. I mean, my problem with the spoiler that I heard from, I can't even remember his name, but you've got this girl, this Kira. She shows up, in the beginning, and then she gets separated, and it's so cheap version of what happened with Bria Theron. Bria, he saved her. He took her back to her home. Her dad liked him. Because, I mean, if you look at Han, he's a very decent human being. He really, really is. He's been screwed over by life. And he's got choices he's got to make to survive. And if you look at him that way, you can understand him. And they end up losing a lot of, money and stuff that they thought that they had. They got screwed over by her family, and she left him with enough money to go to the Imperial Academy, and he took the test and made it. He ends up in the Imperial Naval Academy, does everything as better than everybody else does, ends up an Imperial fighter pilot, and runs into Chewbacca, and that's where everything went south again. And why isn't that good enough to do in a movie? Because then you could explain why he understands Wookiee, because the only sentient being that cared about him was a Wookiee female who was cooking on the ship that he, as a child, found himself basically enslaved to. All right, and then all this other stuff happens, and then he enters the ship with a bunch of Wookiee cubs. They're going, can you help us? And he understands what they're saying, and he's like, and then he meets Chewbacca, and he's told by his commanding officer, kill the Wookiee, skin the Wookiee, and bring the pelt back to me. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then he ends up basically using his blaster and stun to put the guy down, and then he ends up getting, kicked out of the Imperial Navy. And then, you've got a scene in the next novel with Chewbacca hovering over him as he's getting drunk, going, leave me alone. You caused me enough trouble. I've done enough for Wookiees, blah, blah, blah. And then, Chewbacca, 5 minutes later, saves his life from getting his ass kicked by some giant alien who thinks he's cheating him in a card game. That is a good story, right? Being dumped into a pit and meeting a muddy Chewbacca, they suddenly become friends and lifelong partners, and life debt and all that shit. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me. There's no reason for it. But then they're not making it for people who know this shit. They're making it for morons. Oh God, I don't even want to go there anymore. It just hurts.
Right. So Alan P, you've been quiet for a while, man.
Well, when it comes to Star Wars, my knowledge compared to you guys is not as first rate. But to piggyback a little bit off what Stephanie is saying, I wouldn't so much say that I would say they're making it for idiots or morons. Rather, their intention is to make it for, I would say, the quote-unquote fans that they so much like to insult, and everybody, basically the classic fans. They really are pandering these movies to them. Because if you think about it, a lot of the younger crowds, they'll go see those movies, and yeah, they'll go see it because, for example, you got someone like Emilia Clarke, you got someone like Donald Glover, who probably a lot of these younger audiences are more familiar with. For me, like I said, I only realized of Donald Glover from one video he put out maybe years ago, and it turns out I didn't even know that video was him until I actually researched it. Emilia Clarke, I don't know where she's from. I don't care if I've ever watched anything of hers. I never cared to. So this is why I don't make attachments to actors and stuff like that. But it's evident because, look, think of it like this. You made a movie about Han Solo. Clearly, the name is going to appeal to older audiences. Then you're going to go and throw Star Wars because it just so happens to be the trendy thing that they're trying to promote. But it's really catering more to the older audience. Yeah. You want the older audience to come back for this Han Solo movie. You just happen to add a few retcons here and there, or a few things to change the story. Like the idea of, for example, like I'm not gonna like try to bash the movie just to bash it, but why bring back Darth Maul? Really, like what purpose does that serve in the movie other than fan service? Create a new character, make a new menacing character. Give it. I thought Stephanie's idea wasn't half bad. Like I would have considered an idea like that, like like actual character development. Like, hey, this is how they met and everything. How do you create a story like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's laziness.
Yeah, well, I think it's a combination of things. We definitely have agenda-driven stories, and we definitely have marketing research to check off various boxes, and then they have the fan base itself. So, I think this is why these movies bring in so much, even though people are really starting to hate them. I think Solo is going to do okay. I don't think it's going to do as well as Rogue One. But people I know, that even they were kind of on the fence for The Force Awakens were like, I can't wait to see Rogue One. I don't know anybody that gives a rats about this. And I did look up the books that I have. I'll give you, just to show you here, the first book of that trilogy, and apparently it was incorporated into Anne C. Crispin's Han Solo trilogy. So this stuff remained in it. But Han Solo It Stars In was the first one, and the printed price on here is $1.95. So for the paperback, and I haven't read these since I guess I got them in high school. I don't even know. And then the it was published in '79. I probably didn't buy it till I was in Germany. But then the Han Solo stuff was published in '83. But it's interesting because I think the overall driver of this to me. And I don't know if this is a Lucasfilm. I don't know if it's Disney. I don't know where it is. We've talked about it. Jeff's talked about it. Is they I think they dumped the EU because they didn't want to pay anybody the rights or anybody's estate. Anne is dead. So if they pull things, they say all that is now in the Legends category. They pull things from here, there, and everywhere, but they probably change it enough that it's not considered copied. And then they don't have to pay anybody. They don't, they could have used Brian Daley's books as a way to do several movies. You could do like the Han Solo Adventures. You don't necessarily have to have it as a trilogy. You could do, he's got 3 stories there that you could either borrow from or put straight to movies. Anne has 3 more that you could do in between. You can kind of like something like James Bond, but you don't have to change the character, but that kind of thing. Those things they have a continuity, but they're not sequels, right? Somewhat sequels within the realm of when a particular actor's playing them. Sometimes they could have done something like that, but that would mean they would own Brian Money. They would own what's the guy that Alan Dean Foster did quite a few. They would owe these people actual money, and I don't think they want to borrow. Disney, this is probably, I think it's a Disney decision. They spent the $4 billion, and they're trying to get it back as quickly as possible. And it's in many ways, I'm glad to see it failing. I'm glad that the merchandising is failing. I'm glad, whether or not, I think it contributed to Toys R Us, but Toys R Us was, they had problems years ago, and one of the original owners bought.
They were already on that slope.
Yeah, one of the original owners bought the stores back, and not of the greatest deals in business history. But I think a lot of it comes down to, I think this is, Jeff's, I think he's right, that why you're going to see Chewie and R2 and, the original, what's his name who played R2? He's dead. The guy in
R2's dead?
Didn't he die a year ago?
Yeah, he did. Kenny Davis.
Kenny Davis, yeah.
Last year.
You mean okay. I thought he was talking about R2 the character.
Right.
Yeah,
and no, the guy in the suit. But so we already have someone else in Chewbacca. We've already had someone else, two different people wearing the Darth Vader. Episode 3, Hayden was actually in the costume. We had a different person play him in Rogue One. So you don't owe David Mayhew any money if you do that. Or David Prowse, rather. Peter Mayhew, you don't have to know him any money for Chewie. And even in the prequels, sometimes it was him and sometimes it was someone else. So you have to pay them for their efforts. But if you make a Chewie doll or whatever character, here he is in his Solo, and now you have a different actor playing Solo. You don't have to pay these fees for likenesses and stuff. And I fully expect, now I will be surprised if R2D2 and C-3PO aren't somehow in this movie, because they're in, that's kind of like the gag, right? Is they're in every Star Wars
3PO is.
Yeah.
3PO is at the end of it, after the credits. He shows up or something like that.
Just to say he's in the movie.
Yeah, because he's been in every one of them. And Mark Hamill let that out, by the way.
R2 should be in there too. He's been in all of them.
Yeah, well, Mark, actually, I want to say something about him. He has been very caustic and trolling passive aggressively.
Oh, yeah.
I have laughed my ass off. And there are people saying, well, he's trolling us too. No, he's not. He's trolling them.
Right.
Because when you look at everything he said before this shit happened, they're not going to like it. They're going to hate this. I don't like what you're doing with my character or anything with the other characters, by the way.
Treating it as an art house film.
Yeah. Which is literally every time I add Rian Johnson, I say an art house film that the critics will love and the fans will hate. I always make sure somehow, if I want to really get him, I want him to hear that when I tweet that, and I know he's got me on mute. I know he does, because he hasn't blocked me, which I love, as Chuck Wendig did, pussy. Giant, fat pig, pussy. But, and but he was right. And Mark was right. This is when I sent him a tweet, and I was like, your politics are crazy, but I love you anyway. It's like talking to my big brother, one of my brothers. You know what I'm saying? It's like I grew up with you, you're a pain in my ass, but I love you anyway. And that's how I look at him. And he has liked my tweets since I did that. It's like this is Star Wars. The way we grew up with it is a uniting thing. It doesn't matter who you grew up with, your politics, your religion, whatever. We're all in this together. And when it's this, when you're throwing this artificial shit, and this is artificial, into Star Wars, then it's like, stop. And he senses it. He figured it out. He knew what we were going to go for. He had this, and it's like, no, stop it. They didn't listen to him. Well, guess what? Now you've got this backlash that's growing, and we're all laughing at them. And I've got a big bottle of Clico in the freezer, or not the freezer, the refrigerator. And the moment that Kathleen Kennedy is, I have to go to do other things, and Rian Johnson says, well, I have other things I have to do, and Pablo Hidalgo grabs his golden parachute. I'm going to crack that puppy open, and I'm going to get drunk off my ass.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, we're one. We won. They're going to fix it. A friend of mine in Australia basically said Dave Filoni will probably be the creative director of everything. And I'm not sure if I like that. But Jon Favreau is probably going to take over Lucasfilm.
Yeah, I saw he was at the premiere. I saw a group shot, and he was in the group shot.
Yeah. He's in the movie, actually.
And then the guy talking to Lucas, I cannot remember. That actor I've seen before, but I can't remember his name. But
yeah, there's a shot of Lucas with this smirk on his face.
Right.
And somebody wrote, "The look on your face when you realize Kathleen Kennedy's gone." And it's funny. I mean, it's like, stop it. It's Star Wars. Disney has to adapt to Star Wars. Star Wars doesn't have to adapt to in Disney. And oh, by the way, what's wrong with the little boys having heroes? You know? Nothing. There's absolutely nothing. If I had a son, my husband's a Marine. My dad was a World War II veteran. You know, my heroes are Vince Lombardi, and you think about the people that I grew up with. I have two female heroes, Thatcher and Golda Meir. That's it. My mom. You know, that's it. You know, women should not be afraid to embrace male figures. All right. And my dad was always like, "You're going to learn to shoot a gun. You want to learn to ride a horse? I don't know how to teach you, but I'll go with God, do that." And he let me do that, right? He let me do things. My sisters, because I grew up in the 50s and 60s, were more in whatever. They didn't. But my dad was like, "Whatever you want to do, you just do whatever you want." That is how I grew up. And as, you know, in 77, Leia spoke to me. In 1980, she spoke bigger. In 83, way bigger, because leader, lover, best friend, kick-ass, warrior, right? That's a real woman. I don't need Gloria Steinem or Kathleen Kennedy telling me women are always perfect and men suck. And ultimately, that's why this fails. And that's why Solo fails, because when I see this, when I heard the rumor, when I heard the spoilers, I'm like, first off, Alden Ehrenreich is not Han Solo. There's a voice. There's that presence. There's the height. There's the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And is he like the same height as, is it Donald? Who's the guy playing Lando? I know it's Glover. Donald Glover. Yeah, those two seem much shorter than Harrison Ford and Billy Dee Williams.
Yeah, they are. Harry is 6'1", or, you know, when you get older, you shrink a little bit, but he's 6'1" then. And Billy Dee Williams is 6 foot. And then, you know, and what I love is, all right, and this is funny. Alden Ehrenreich is 5'9".
Okay.
And the guy they chose is 6'9". And when Ford was chosen to play Han Solo, it was so obvious. That whole scenario is hilarious. And somehow George Lucas and one of the producers showed up at a health place, and they met Peter Mayhew, who's 7'2". Right. And they walked in. George Lucas looked at him and said, "Okay, he's fine. Whatever. He's got the." He walked out. He walked out. And it's so funny because it's like, when you see them together, it's like, Chewie's a foot taller than Han, and Han's a foot taller than Leia. And that's hilarious to me. Is everyone's like, there's one more place you could reach up to. And it just, but it's perfect. And the Luke is somewhere wandering in the middle going, "That's cool. whatever.
So Alden Ehrenreich is 5'9"?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's like 4 inches shorter than Harrison.
3 inches, 4 inches. He's Mark Hamill's height.
Okay. Because I mean, even in stills, even in images and the way they look around the set, it's like they seem too small. And that's another problem I have with the. I mean, there's several problems with the Millennium Falcon. I mean, this thing that apparently they've got a cargo thing that's going to break off. They don't even know how that ship worked, and originally, and that it was pushing cargo and all this other stuff as far as its design for what it was originally to do. It was old. I mean, granted, I'll dig up my Calrissian books, but I seem to remember that it was not brand new when Lando had it.
No, it wasn't.
And now they have this thing looking like it's coming straight out of the factory. And I'm like, he may have made modifications, but it needs to look like an older ship that's been modified, not something brand spanking new.
Yeah, it's like I looked at it and go, did Joanna Gaines walk in and her husband go in and kick out down the doors and fix it up? Because it's not the Falcon. It's literally, it's like, why would you do that? Again, Star Wars is a thing people give to each other. It is not something you can just make new over and over again. It's everything that George Lucas wrote, and it's the story, the never-ending story of humanity. So you don't just pick up and make it new again. You refine it. You make it accessible for everybody else, and then you give it to the next generation. You just go, we're going to kill everything, and then you can do it every way you want. That's bullshit. And it's like, God, why would you do that? I can't even. And that's what they did. So when I look at the Falcon, and I can see it looks more streamlined, which I don't like. And it's got this thing which I understand why it's there, but it's really not explained. It's right. Like, okay, there you go. Okay, whatever. And it never appeared before, but it's there now. So my question is, in the 3 years from the New Hope to The Empire Strikes Back, Han and all the art and all the comic books and everything never carried anything in those claws ever. Even after that, you never see anything in those claws. So suddenly you've got this shit. What the fuck? Sorry.
Well, and even when you look at those, that space is there on purpose. It's not, something that's going to get ejected, and that's one of the questions. But again, I think this is a decision that's made purely based on merchandising. They can't quite sell the old one to us. They probably owe somebody money, so we're going to modify it slightly. And we'll invent some BS reason why that's true. Even though the lore of the ship says that's not what it's for. Those things were to push cargo. The reason why the cockpit is off to the side is so the pilot could see around the cargo they were pushing. And so when you look at, and it's a Corellian, this is an old Republic ship. This thing is I shouldn't say very old. It's not like it's thousands of years old, but it's quite old now when it's being repurposed as a smuggling freighter. Because the whole point, it can carry some freight, but its main thing is to push large cargo. You think of us as a tugboat, or not a tugboat, but a barge ship. Now, I don't know where you guys live, but here, I live in Cincinnati, and you can go down, and it's the Ohio River is pretty decent size, and you see this little boat pushing these cargo barges. Now, these cargo barges on their own, they're just going to float down river, right? They can't go anywhere. They have no power. They're like a big, huge dumpster, really. They're open. Yep. And they can carry a bazillion pounds of cargo, and you'll see 5, 6, 7 of these in a row. Sometimes double double width.
I grew up on the Mississippi River,
Right.
about Wisconsin.
Yeah. So you've got
And
this small boat, okay, relative in size. Now that boat has a frickin' big engine in it. It's because it has to have a lot of torque to move because going down river is one thing, but I've seen them come up river and go into smaller rivers where their margin of error is feet, okay, as in 2 or 3 feet on each side, and they'll let the river turn and move and push, and then they have to push against the river and everything else. Or it's like like a tugboat. Go find video on YouTube or somewhere of a big, huge ship coming into port, and these tugboats are out there. Sometimes they push up against them. Sometimes they get the lines and they pull them this way and that to get them into a port because the engines on the vessel can't turn the vessel quickly enough, or there's too much current, or there's a particular path. Well, that's the space version of this, what this thing originally was designed to do. So they put some stupid cargo thing in there, and I'm sure it's going to play into the plot where, or maybe it'll be in the next movie if there really is a cliffhanger and this really going to make this a trilogy-esque thing or series of movies. They'll get rid of it at some point, but it's just I believe that those types of decisions, changing the Millennium Falcon, making it blue, and coloring it and different all this, in part is to kind of try and destroy the old Star Wars, but the other side of it is merchandising, and we have to make the toy different. So we're going to make it different by putting something on the ship that was never there.
It's merchandising. It's also trying to, change the story, change the OT a little bit. When you meet Han and Chewie in A New Hope, he slides into that booth and he says, "I'm Han Solo, Captain Millennium Falcon." Chewie tells me you're looking for passage to Alderaan, and Kenobi and Luke are like, "Yeah, blah blah blah." There's no cargo, and when you open up the EU books, cargo was either under the floors, which, if I remember Rebel Dawn, that's how he ejected all of the spice that he was smuggling for Jabba when he was boarded and he had all those kids on board. Long story, but that is...
Which one
he
is
literally
that?
had a bunch of... It's that, if you've ever read Rebel Dawn, at the end of it...
Is that Crispin's books?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's been literally screwed over by his quote-unquote girlfriend because she's following orders of the Rebel Alliance, because they need all the spice that they stole to pay for attacking the Death Star. Okay? He doesn't know that, and he and basically all the smugglers are screwed over. So he is screwed, and he and Chewie are trying to leave this place, and a bunch of kids show up, and they realize that they're the offspring of these slaves, and they're all Corellians. So Chewie's like, "Well, we have to take him back home," and Han's like, "Oh shit!" So they take him back, and they want to give him another blood stripe, blah 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 blah. And while they were doing that, they picked up Jabba's cargo of spice and Kessel. They wanted to take it back, and they got pulled over with the kids there and dumped it off, and we're going to pick it up, and it's gone. The Imperials picked it up, and that's how Han got screwed over. And then he goes to ask Lando for basically a loan, and Lando punches the shit out of him because Lando feels like he got screwed over because he was part of the deal to basically trash this place that they were doing, and smugglers were going to get half, and the Alliance was going to get half, and then the Alliance took all of it, and nobody could do anything. So that's basically the end of Rebel Dawn. And Han and Chewie end up wandering over to Tatooine, and then they're there, and Han runs into Jabba, And what's interesting, or not Jabba, but Boba Fett. And Boba Fett tells him basically, I need you to tell Bria's dad that she's dead because she died. And the girl that screwed him over. So Han's like, I'll do that. And then Boba Fett says, you have a price on your head. I've heard, and you don't want me out after you. And Han goes, cool, whatever. So he basically sends a hologram and says, tells Brit Theron's dad she's gone. I don't want to tell you this, but yeah, whatever. And then he goes and runs into Luke and Obi-Wan, and that's how it happened. And it's a really great intrinsic story where everything runs into everything else. It dovetails. And now we've got this, whatever it is. I don't even know what it is, but, it just, I'm laughing. I'm mocking it now. I mean, these people don't care about what they're doing. They're so apathetic, and they hate us. They hate the fans. And they're making money hand over fist. And I'm looking at them going, when it stops, you're going to cry rivers of tears. And it will stop.
Well, I think on the merchandising side, it wouldn't surprise. I mean, we were already seeing some stuff from Solo. And if you guys hear dogs growling, they're all down here now for some reason. My daughter left to take her friend home. So, which means we're getting long on time. But when you look at the merchandising sales and how things are going, it would not surprise. Now, Solo being a in-between movie, it probably had a reduced, the merchandising stuff for Solo was probably done 6, 8, 9 months ago, maybe longer. But when they come around to Hasbro or whomever to do the merchandising for Episode 9, they're going to be hesitant. They're going to be like, because the stores aren't going to order it because they've got stuff they can't sell already. They got stuff from Force Awakens they can't sell. I mean, at my local Meijer, interestingly enough, the last time I was there, I just cruised the toys. The only thing on sale is the new Solo stuff. Everything else is back to full price, which there's not a lot. I don't know if there's as many Rose Ticos as Ethan keeps finding. But it's Ethan. And,
Ethan's got Rose Tico on the brain.
Oh, that guy's he's becoming obsessed. But
I don't want him to become obsessed with Holdo because then I'd be like, okay, I gotta stop listening to you now. Right,
but it's one of those things that's like the other stuff is it's mind-boggling, really. That this stuff is so so I would not be surprised if the next time around, when they start, probably because the movie's supposed to be out a year and a half from now, so most likely at the end of this year is when they're going to start looking at merchandising for Episode 9, because if it's anything like The Last Jedi, it'll come out in October. So somewhere in the fourth quarter of this year, maybe October this year, so let's say a year in advance, they're going to, and stores are going to be like, the buyers for Meijer and Walmart and Target and Kroger and the big, they're going to be like, look, we still have crap on the shelves from 3 years ago, so we want a lot less. So that because Jeff's right, when they make this stuff, it's done. Now they could guess wrong, and my dogs are barking at each other. They could guess wrong and say people aren't going to like it, and the movie's well loved. But I think there's going to be pushback, and that's going to be the beginning of it. And they may let's let this thing ride out. But if Rian Johnson still gets his trilogy, it's going to just each time it's going to be like another 15% drop. And then at some point they're going to tip the scale, and they're no longer going to be profitable.
I think it's really the mine in Australia who does finance. His name is Daniel. Sent me a message, and basically, all these movies bundled together have not made a third of what they had to for the shareholders to be happy. And if you look at the toy sales and collectibles, they're not selling at all. And, you know, when you look at Iger not getting his bonus and his executives not getting their bonus, and then you look at the haggard, beat-down face of Kathy Kennedy, who's been you haven't seen her since TLJ came out. Shit's going down right now. I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but you don't bring in Jon Favreau for a TV show, you know. You don't bring the guys from from Game of Thrones for whatever they're doing. There are things that are changing, and I look at it as this: she will quietly walk away, and Ryan Johnson, his publicist or whatever, will say he's gotten an opportunity he can't miss, blah blah blah, and that trilogy will go on the shelf, never to be heard again. That's what's going to happen, because they're not making the money. They've invested $9 billion into this thing, from buying Lucasfilm to building this huge theme parks in all their wherever they are. And it's like, hey, you know what? The movies are the ad for this, and it's not working.
Yeah, I forgot about the theme parks. Yeah, you're right. They're doing the Star Wars Land or whatever they're calling it, and we've even talked about it, and I forgot about it. Yeah, and so it's more than just the $4 billion they're you know, when you're in it for the long haul like that and have such short-sighted movies, that's really bad.
Yeah, it is. And when you have someone like, you know, J.J. Abrams, you know, what I would have done if George Lucas had approached me and said, I want you to take over Lucasfilm, I would have looked at him, bawled my eyes out, and said, I will do everything to keep your legacy alive and perfect. We will pass on to this next generation what you envisioned. And then I would have said, I want to talk to Ridley Scott, Chris Nolan, and Peter Jackson. You know, and I probably would have picked Ridley Scott, because personally I would probably get along with him really well, because I'm drawn to guys like that. And I think that vision, after what he said about seeing Star Wars for the first time, he and I would have probably really would have gelled. But him and Kathy Kennedy, oh my God, an alpha male and her, holy crap. I can't even, I mean, when she talks about Harrison Ford, and I look at her and I think, there you are talking to him with your arms across the chest in the defensive mode. And he was like, I just want a cup of coffee, you know?
Right.
I mean, an alpha male like that would freak her out. I'd be like, so what's going on? You know, she's such a... And how is she married? How she's been married for so long? This is what I don't get. Oh my God. It's like, I don't... yeah. Anyway, guys, I gotta go to bed.
All right.
So if you talk about Avengers or whatever, I'm going to hit the rack, because my husband is gone. He looked at me with a sour look, and I have to go. So.
Well, thanks for joining us. It's been, it's been an interesting conversation, and I'm interested in seeing how many of these rumors are true. But I still wonder, in the back of my mind, it's kind of, it's that skeptic of me saying, how much of it's real and how much of it's just, Disney attempting to get some manner of interest, no matter how silly concocted, for this movie. Because it's going to be, it's between Avengers, which is turning out to be probably one of the biggest, at least of recent memory, and Deadpool 2. I mean, I saw another video today where someone did a mashup, and someone posted it, of the proposal with, what's her name, and Deadpool. It was great. My wife, she and I watched the first one through Netflix. We may actually do a date night for Deadpool 2. And I know it's not a dating movie, but you got a 48-year-old woman who wants to go see a comic book movie. You must be doing something right. And it's the the irreverent humor that's got it. It's because it's not a stereotypical comic book movie. Because she was kind of meh for Wonder Woman. We went and saw it together, and she's like, "Yeah, it was okay." So
yeah.
But thanks for joining us, and hopefully some other time we can start all this whole stuff a little earlier and have you back again. That'd be great.
All right.
Maybe after
Good
Deadpool
night,
or something. All right.
Good
See
night.
ya. Bye.
All right.
All right, good
Have a
night.
good night. See you later. Bye.
All right. Let's see what happens here. Hold
on. I know she's not there.
All right.
Probably.
I just want to make sure it wasn't going to stop recording. So, because I'm busy making, I've decided who the BBC for the night was going to be. It's another white chick. Sorry, anybody looking for diversity.
No, we're not a diversity channel. We never have been. I'm just here by luck.
So let's. We've been talking for an hour on Solo. Although it's been mostly monologues, but. Yeah, it's one of the things I was realizing, and it's sometimes hard, when Eric is, roboting out like Kendo was. Did you listen to yesterday's episode?
Of the live stream?
Oh, yeah, that's right, because you made comments later, even on the live stream. That was hilarious when he was trying to tell a joke, and they can't get the punchline because he keeps, all the digital static, and is this better? And Dion starts teasing him about it, and then it gets worse. Oh, I was at work listening to it, and I was in tears.
Robot Dion.
Yeah, I was in
Robot
tears.
Dion's hilarious.
Oh, because he'd say something, and then there's silence for like 4 or 5 seconds, and then Jeff starts laughing, and that was great.
It was a great time. It was a great episode. I think I'm not sure it might be the first time I listened to one of the live stream episodes. I've heard of the other live streams, but it wasn't for like an episode. But this one definitely was fun. It was great, and Robot Dion, Kendo's game. Of course, Jeff's story of the week was also pretty funny. I was surprised one of them was not Florida.
One of them was Florida.
No, one of them wasn't Florida. That's what I said. One of them wasn't.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, the one that was Ohio. He started and said, "This has got to be Ohio." I mean, I got him right on both of them. I'm like, "Oh, that's Florida," and then he started the other one. Oh, yeah, that's Ohio. I was like, "That's definitely Ohio."
That definitely caught me by surprise.
Yeah.
I was like, Florida. But yeah, it was fun. I was making a few comments, usual shit posting. And that was about it. I was pretty tired last night. I was pretty tired all day today, so I don't really remember too well what else talked about. You'll have to like really jog my memory to remind me what happened last night. Fuck. But I know Eric ain't here tonight, and he probably would have wanted to talk Infinity War, so I really won't go into it too much. And I don't know how you feel about it. If you want to go see it, don't want to go see it. So.
Oh, I don't give a crap. I mean, I may go see it. My son's asked me about seeing it. I don't really. For me to go see a movie, I really have to have an overwhelming need. I don't do well with crowds. So if I go to a movie, it'll be, when it's only in one theater and twice a day and, 1 o'clock in the afternoon when there's 6 people there. I'm not going to stand in line for it. I'm not going to, when I was younger, I would do that, but not, I haven't been able to do that in a long, long, long time. So.
Well, now that you mentioned something like that, what's crazy is that when I was still a teenager. I would say what would that have been, like maybe 15 years ago, right? So it's been a while. I would remember, when you went to the movie theater, that we didn't have the things that we do nowadays with internet, with pre-ordering tickets, reserving seats. All that stuff wasn't a thing back then. And this was during the time when the movie theater experience was kind of like faltering a little bit. Like it wasn't. Like it was on the decline and things weren't as good. So, But something like Star Wars, for example, just not to get too much into the whole Star Wars topic, but something like Star Wars, something as epic and monumental, the prequels especially. I remember we used to line up outside of the theater for the first showing on weekends just to go watch the movie. We didn't care if it was bad or good. We would just went there to go watch. And this would be people dragging their kids along, people who were seeing it for the first time, people who may have seen the originals, you know. So it was kind of a different experience for when me and my brother and my nephew last weekend, we went to go watch Infinity War. How I noticed that difference. Like, wow, we actually had to pre-order these tickets to reserve the seats that we were going to watch in that theater that morning. We saw that they no longer had that theater experience where you would actually line up online to get the tickets or show up in person to see what movies are available and stuff. So, you know, we live in a very interesting time of convenience, and it was just a bit of an observation I made to myself that day. All things considered, I think Infinity War is doing, like, it's heading towards $2 billion. Last I read something online.
Yeah, something like that. Sounds about right.
I hope it does. I mean, it really was. I'll say this much. Expectations-wise, it was 50-50. It was either going to be really good or it was going to be terrible. And thankfully, it was an amazing movie. It was fun to watch. I really don't want to talk about it much because, one, you haven't really seen it. So it's kind of going to be difficult to explain certain things. And there are some movies that people need to watch to kind of understand what's going on. In some ways, it works only as a movie. It works as a movie if you have seen some of the other movies in the series. But then there's others that you could skip and, you know, you wouldn't be out of the loop necessarily. I thought the characters, for the most part, were good at what they did. Some people complain about dialogue. I thought the dialogue was one of the funnier things about the movie, just having the characters act naturally with one another. There was a scene where, like, Doctor Strange calling people, I forgot, I think it was like calling Iron Man douchebag. And I was just like, it's funny because it's true kind of moment. Like, they just felt like they were talking naturally to one another. Action sequences were great. Story moved along. It flowed pretty nicely. There were a few moments here and there where you could probably say that's bullshit, but like maybe a scene or two later and a couple minutes later, it would redeem itself quickly. Overall, I will say this much. If people don't understand it, watch the movie, you'll understand why. But Thanos became like that character overnight. He became, even though he's the antagonist, he became like this beloved or very admired character overnight. Very charismatic, very charming. And he comes off a lot differently than what he was portrayed in the comics, especially with the Infinity Gauntlet series, where he like his actions you could even describe a bit more petty. Like the reason that he did what he did was really just to appease death. And I actually had to reread the comic just to make sure I understood the source material correctly for whenever we decided to talk about it. But I know Eric ain't here, so I don't know if he might have read it or if you had read the Infinity Gauntlet at some point in your life.
No, I haven't. I've never read it.
It's actually I'm not a big comic book guy, but the few comics that I've read here and there, the ones that I really enjoyed, this is amongst them. So it's a great experience. If you do go decide to watch it with your son, I think you guys will have a good time. I'm pretty sure he'll enjoy it. I know there's people that still haven't watched it yet that probably should. And I only say that in the sense that, you know, if you really want to go watch it, then just go watch it. Don't, wait around the bush. But I understand if you are skeptical or just haven't had the time for it, that's up to you. If you don't feel like watching it, that's fine too, because at this point, there is some level of fatigue that's going to hit. For me personally, if this was the climax of the Marvel movies franchise, then what we're going to get after is going to be when we start seeing the disappointments. So one of the things I'll say is this much about the movie. With one exception, and this is the ending credits, the movie itself to me is almost a flawless experience. I won't say it's perfect, like near perfect, like nothing can be changed to make it better. There aren't flaws here and there, but it's much more enjoyable. It's probably one of the better movies, the best movies I've seen, best movie probably I've seen so far in this year of anything that has been released. And you know how I love Death Wish as a movie, so that's saying something. But the ending credits is the biggest disappointment out there. And I remember when the scene happened, there was silence. There wasn't this ooh or ah type of moment like, oh shit. I think I was the only one that broke the silence by saying something stupid. And even then, nobody responded because they didn't know what to say. I went with my brother. I went with my nephew. I went with my brother-in-law. He took my niece. A bunch of us went, and even he was like, my brother-in-law, who's not one, like, he's kind of like yourself in no sense. Like, you have to be really invested in something to want to go to the movie theaters. Otherwise, he'll just watch it on Showbox or something.
Right.
He told me the same thing. He was like, I love the movie, but that after the ending, referring to the credits, he was like, this is stupid. I was expecting something else. And I was like, yeah, I kind of feel you on that one. It's like when it's almost as if you just finished making love and it ended with a disappointing climax. It's really the best way to describe it. Other than that, the movie itself, cut that out, and the rest of it just feels like such an entertainment popcorn movie. It's got a lot of funny moments. Inadvertently has a few accidentally comical moments. Particularly with Spider-Man towards the end, I just laughed my ass off. Everybody else was sad. But I won't ruin anything else for you if you do decide to watch it.
That's fine. You're not going to ruin it for me, so no problem. Well,
I'll be purpose.
Well, any other pieces you want to talk about? Anything else you want to talk about? Or should we wrap this thing up, or what are we doing?
Well, I'll talk about one more experience, and that was actually... Oh, wait, what am I talking about? Infinity War this past weekend. It was the week before that. Oh, God, I already made that. That was a fail. But this past week, which actually was this past Saturday specifically, was Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah, that's right. You did say that.
Yeah, so I don't know if anybody here went out to get any... Well, it's just me and you. But I don't know anybody else who may be listening. It's only like about 5 of us. But whatever. I don't know if anybody else in the world has who listens to the regular show may have gone out for Free Comic Book Day. Me and my brother and my nephew, we went out to get some comics at some local comic shops here in New York City. A few of which I'll say this much. Like, there was a lot of comic hype, a lot of comic shops I wasn't even aware that started opening up. I don't know if this may have something to do with the rise in the popularity of like the superhero movies, why these comic shops are opening up, or why suddenly there's an invested interest in comics even by non-comic shops. But whatever, it was a free day. It was a day to get free comic books. I met some old friends that I talked to that day. I even got to meet God, I'm gonna butcher his name right now, but he was one of the writers in the Maximum Carnage series, Spider-Man, which I read a few issues, one in particular which I bought. I was going home from work one day or hanging out. It was just back when I was in college. I was going home from work. Actually, I was hanging out with some friends after I left work. And there was a homeless man just selling comics. So I decided to pick one up. It had Spider-Man Maximum Carnage on it. I read it. I believe it was like the conclusion of it. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was fun. I got to meet one of the writers in one of the shops. His name is Terry Kavanagh. I hope I'm saying that name correctly. I did not know at the time that was him who did one of the writings on it. It was cool to meet a comic book artist, a writer, or something along those lines, just to talk and get to know them. Just say, hey, thanks, for doing what you do. I really enjoy these. I really enjoy that reading it. The one thing I could tell you is, you know how much you can tell if someone really likes a comic or a book that much is by the wear and tear you see it. Like how many times they read it so much that it's now like literally pages are like torn, are wearing out and everything. So he signed me to different versions of his new comic called The Musketeers. I haven't read it yet, but taking a glance on the outside covers of both comics and inside, it looks exactly like what a comic should look like. You know, these interestingly drawn characters, sexy but badass looking women in them, sword fights, magic, devil, demons, gunslingers, all sorts of things. You know, badassery all around. In a fictional universe, sci-fi, whatever you want to call it, keep it short, keep it sweet, and provide a little fan service here and there. So it was a positive experience. I have a signed copy of each variant cover. I almost don't even want to read them because I don't want to damage it now. But that was a cool experience. Now, I also want to talk about a not so cool experience. So if you want to sit down for this one's going to be a bit of a doozy.
Keep going, man.
But I know it's going to be mostly me talking.
I know. No, yeah, go ahead.
No, that's cool. No, but this is the thing. I mean, it's how could I explain this without just rambling? There's a lot of things I just don't tolerate, and I just can't tolerate. And hypocrisy isn't necessarily one of them. It's how you go about being a hypocrite sometimes that I can't tolerate, because we're all guilty of saying something and then doing something else at some point in our lives. Sometimes it's not, it's a minor thing. Sometimes it's something very egregious. It depends. I look at everything not so much in a black and white perspective sometimes, but, you know, a case by case scenario. This is one of those instances where I looked at things like, this was pretty much a black and white scenario. No pun intended, considering the topic matter that we're going to go into. So one of the shops I went to had a very good assortment of comics. It's a fairly Japanese type of entertainment store, mostly Japanese movies, Japanese literature. They do have some American and foreign stuff as well, but predominantly it's like Japanese type of culture store. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're into art, if you're into a lot of the modern entertainment over there in Japan, that's probably the place for you to go. Mangas, you name it. So we went there. We picked up a few free comics. But I kid you not, the guy that was working there, and I don't know if he was a manager or what, but you want to talk about pushing an agenda in something like Star Wars and Kathleen Kennedy saying the Force is female, stuff like that. To hear it from somebody's mouth, and race shouldn't matter here, but in this particular case, I'm just gonna say this was a black man saying, with a megaphone, mind you, like, I don't know how much more louder you had to be, saying to a group of audiences like that if you're a person of color and you do not pick something that was written by a person of color, you're doing a disservice to your community. Those type of verbiage.
Right.
I don't understand. Why do you have to do this race baiting nonsense? Why are you on this SJW culture path?
Well, look at the crap Kanye's catching for the same thing. You know, I cannot believe that I'm sometimes I don't. I think I finally did. I don't really like. You know, I've
and
never
yet he's
cared,
the one making sense here.
Right. I've never cared any. You know, he says something I've never really even been. I mean, some things, you know, it was the thing with Taylor Swift, right, where he said, you know, you didn't really deserve it or whatever, or didn't want to give her an award. Wasn't that Kanye a few years ago?
Yeah.
And here he is, you know, I'm sure he doesn't agree with everything Trump's doing, but the fact that he's decided to speak his own mind, you know, and I don't care if I agree with him or not, the fact that, you know, he's being ostracized is exactly what you're talking about. That, oh, we have someone who's going to think for themselves and be off the reservation. You know, this is why I keep calling them sheeple. You know, different groups. Yeah. They're people that, because sheep will bay. They'll start, if a sheep wanders off, they'll start making noise that, hey, someone's not doing something's right, and it's exactly what you're seeing. You know, bad ideas should be fully exposed in the brightness of light, so that we can all see how bad they are, not shunned and hidden. Now, some of these are not bad ideas, but yeah, it's. No, I mean, I got into a conversation with a guy I used to work with who was, I guess, mostly black. I mean, he had green eyes, so somewhere he had white, some Caucasian in his past. He was probably somewhere between Jeff and Dion in skin tone. And we got into this conversation. This was back in the 90s, okay? So this was over 20 years ago. And, he thought he had me figured out of what I like to do, the way I thought and stuff, because I tended to vote Republican back then. And we got into a conversation and I realized, no, I don't really have this guy figured out. It just depends on what topic we're talking about. And I even told him, I said, and we had great discussions, and sometimes he convinced me of things and sometimes I convinced him of others. But even when we disagreed, we were thankful for the conversation, right? We're not shouting at each other from across the room. We weren't angry that, hey, you don't agree with me. And he was kind of on the fence on some things, but it was beginning to take shape back in the 90s because you couldn't speak badly against Clinton. If you were black and speaking against a Democrat, that was bad.
Yeah.
But even then, even with, look at Bush, the son, he had Condoleezza Rice and Clarence Thomas back in the 80s with the first Bush, or was it Bush or was that Reagan? I forget now. But all the crap, because here was a black man who was happy that he got started before the civil rights movement, right? He worked hard for everything he had, and didn't have affirmative action and all that other stuff to help him. And the thing is, he's right. Kanye's right. This is a mindset that people have gotten into, and I still haven't figured out where in the heck the 400 years come from, because it had 400. Slavery more or less started in 1640 in the colonies and ended in 1865. So do your math, and it's not 400 years.
Well, if you want to be technical about slavery and shit like that, I mean, if we look at what can we consider slavery, or we can go as far back as even before the quote unquote slavery that gets pushed in schools nowadays.
Oh, yeah, I mean, and it's still going on now. There's refugees in Libya that are being there's black on black slavery is all over. I mean, and we've talked about before, a lot of the crusades and things were against Muslim raiders who were looking for slaves, and they didn't care if they were white, green, or purple. They were just people living by the sea that were unarmed, and we could capture and sell them somewhere. A lot of these Muslim pirates is what they were doing for hundreds of years, and the Egyptians had slaves before them, and I'm sure if you go back in time, it's probably unfortunately been part of the human condition for, let's say, at least 6,000 years. So and I'm not saying, well, it's always been around, and that's not justifying. I'm just saying that it's a horrendous thing, but it's different it's different if you submit yourself to be a servant as opposed to you're captured and then you have no way of escaping or face death or whatever. But yeah, I'm not surprised by this guy's actions. That, hey, if you come in here as a black guy, you better be buying some black guy's comic. This is how we get Riri Williams, and we get Miles Morales and this other nonsense where the only reason it's created is to cater to somebody. This whole thing, like the Apu stuff that you and I have talked about. I looked it up, and it's one guy wrote an article, one person. And I don't even know if he was offended or just talked about it, that it should be offensive. I don't even remember now. It's like, how in the freak can one person have that much sway? Everybody's afraid of the boogeyman, and the boogeyman isn't even a shadow. It's just a figment of our imagination.
It's basically crying wolf on a more, I would say, ignorant level, really, because ignorance is just not knowing better. But then again, with SJWs, I always feel like it's one of two camps. Either you don't know better and you're acting on it, or you do know better and you're still choosing to run with this narrative because there's something that you can gain from it. So I always feel like people are one of those two camps when it comes to SJWs. That's where I'll say it's a little bit more black and white. But to add the icing on this cake, this guy keeps going on about how it turns out a lot of comic book readers were Trump supporters. That's one of the moments where I was like, and looking at him, because I didn't want to say anything to him. I didn't really want to start anything. I didn't want to get kicked out, because I was already like, all right, you're dealing with a very, very liberal individual here. The way he's just talking screams very left-wing type of person, very political and everything. He's trying to make everything politics here. Nobody's going to stand up to him because nobody's going to want to get in trouble. So he asked me who I voted for, and I decided, I'm pretty sure my answer spoke for itself when I said, I don't discuss politics with comics. And he says, well, I'm ready to. And all I reminded him was like, well, I'll just let the sales figures speak for themselves, which is kind of like the moment where he got quiet for a second and just rebutted with something like, yeah. Like he realized what I was getting at. And I'm like, I hope he did realize what I was trying to get at, because it was one of those things where I was like, if we really had a discussion or we really wanted to have a shouting match, at the end of the day, what I would have said would have probably really driven this person to tears. I would have seen to it myself to be that much of an asshole, just to prove a point that you may think you're this big shot person and your ideas and your naivete, your ideals are like the best in the world, but there are people out there that don't get two shits about what you think about. We just want comic books. We just want to be entertained. We just want to read, relax, and enjoy entertainment. I don't want to be preached to. I don't want to be policed, which, by the way, in that very same comic shop, I will say there was these two girls, one of which looked like a fat Sailor Moon. So if she ever stumbles upon this channel, hi, sweetheart. I doubt it. But, you know, one of the things I said, I was like, how it's cultural weebooism. Like people pretending to like comics, people pretending to like anime, because it's like the trendy thing to do. And I swear to God, these girls came up to me, like they turned around to face me and say, weeboo's a derogatory term. I'm like, just looking at them like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with you? It's like they didn't even like they even considered nerd and geek to be considered derogatory terms. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's how a lot of them identify themselves as. You know, it stopped being an insult a long time ago. How are you saying, like, if you call someone a nerd nowadays, it's like calling them a compliment in most places.
Yeah, it depends.
And what killed me.
Yeah.
And what killed me. I'm sorry for cutting you off here.
No,
but
go
what
ahead.
killed me even more. And this is pretty much where it ends. This is the climax of this one, pun intended. They're trying to police my language, right? Mine, this is an establishment. You have families there with children and everything. Then they're talking about wanting to watch gay Gundam robot sex, mecha robot sex with one another, and they're getting all descriptive about male Gundam robot penetration on penetration. And I'm thinking to myself, you have no shame describing this in front of children, and yet you want to talk to me about me policing my language? Right. I'm like, this is the very definition of SJWs. Like I keep saying, in one of the two camps. Either you're so deluded, like you're so out of touch with reality that you don't understand what's going on, but you think you're always right, and you will always throw a social cause to get your way, or you're in the other camp, which I believe the other individual was, that you know there's something to be getting out of this agenda, and you're willing to push whatever narrative it takes and get your way. Because if you think about it, that individual worked at that store. He had to have been like the manager or something like that. So he obviously had a position of power in that store. And if he didn't agree with somebody, he could get that person kicked out, arrested, whatever. So, a lot of people weren't going to say anything to him. But go outside or go to an actual debate, I'm pretty sure everyone would have destroyed him, hands down.
Yep, probably.
So that was my comic book day experience. It was both positive and somewhat negative. That was a little hiccup of the day that I won't say ruined the experience because it was fairly early in the day, but it was very notable, and it just showed me, and it's something that I've been more or less realizing more and more, that when it comes to political views, political ideology, social justice, social causes, what do we call that? Tone policing, thought policing, any type of policing in general, right? That it's so embedded in society now that people are afraid to speak out against it because just look at it. Who are the individuals that are in power? Are the very same individuals that are petitioning these causes. The ones that say, if you don't agree with me, well, since I have position of power here, I'm the one that calls the shots, and you're the one that could get either arrested, kicked out, thrown out, lose your job, and everything like that.
Well, and they're the ones playing the victim card. You know, they're the ones that are dealing with the power, and yet they're going to claim to be victims. So that was pretty much my experience. Like, it didn't harm me or anyway. Like I said, once I told that guy, well, let the sales figures speak for themselves. And mind you, I really restrained myself in that store. Like, I really wanted to let my 2 cents be known, but I just restrained myself. And then we was talking about Kanye, and the thing that we was talking about not that long ago, about like a few minutes ago, in that same store. And I don't think anybody just wanted to talk to us at that point, because they realized, damn, this dude will say something and I will shut people down. But Comic Book Day was it's still enjoyable, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you guys ever saw it on the chat, how Simpsons Comics basically explained Kathleen Kennedy. No.
Ah, damn. Basically, they made a short comic story for Free Comic Book Day where a criminally deranged individual became a CEO and took over the Krusty the Clown show with forced diversity. And they realized she was an escaped convict or something, so they arrested her.
Huh.
Wasn't really funny, but it's funny how the parallels to Kathleen Kennedy are almost uncanny. Like, it is that spot on.
Well, hey. The Simpsons have been quite good at doing social commentary for quite some time now, so not too surprised.
Die. He needs to die a horrible death.
All right.
Put it down like Lassie.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're about running out of energy, and we've been at this an hour and a half, and it's getting late, and I've got lots to do. So, do you have any other topics you want to cover, or are we ready to put this one under?
Now I'm actually starting to lose my voice too.
All right.
So
let me cover the BBC. Go ahead.
Yes.
So the BBC tonight, young lady by the name of Danielle Sharp. Congratulations. We'll share pictures of her and everything else. If you do a Google search for Danielle Sharp and you put the words hot after it, you'll get a very interesting first image. If you decide you want to see her sans clothing, that's easy too. So
and I'm all for hot women and big boobs.
And she's hot and has big boobs, and I don't know how she is. So, all right. Well, let's close this one out, and we'll say goodnight and hit the bumper music and maybe get to bed by 2 o'clock. So I have been your host, Brainmuffin, and this has been Fancaste episode 37, where every Friday night we sort of get together if we feel like it. Not every Friday, and sometimes not even every other Friday. With me was Stephanie. Eric's driving around somewhere trying to hook up some more money. And from Nueva York has been Mr. Liquid Metal Pro. Say goodnight.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have any proof about a flat Earth tonight, but I don't know, flat Davy Ridley.
Concave chest, the boy chest, Davy Ridley. Good night, everybody.